Good morning and welcome to Accotink Unitarian Universalist Church. I'm Paulette Lichtman-Panzer. I'm a long-time 30-plus year member of this particular congregation. And the UU Church is a welcoming and inclusive community that seeks to create a more just and compassionate world through our actions to bring about justice and by honoring the web of nature of which we all are a part. All are welcome here, no matter whom you love, no matter your identity or heritage, no matter your beliefs or background, no matter your means or abilities, you are welcome here in this religious community.
Greetings. I'm Judy Robison, your worship associate for today. If you're new to Accotink and you would like to talk more about this church, please be sure to reach out to me, to our minister, Reverend Pippin, or to a member of the board. Contact information is posted on our website at www.accotinkuu.org. On our website, you can check the online order of service on the worship section of the webpage. While you are on the website, be sure to check our events page for upcoming virtual gatherings and other news. I now invite you to close your other windows or apps and devices, take a deep breath, and center yourself for worship.
We enter into this time and virtual space to join our hearts and minds together. Please reflect on the words of Elizabeth Gilbert. To be fully seen by somebody, then be loved anyhow. This is a human offering that can border on miraculous.
Our reading is Hope Rises by Reverends John Burns and Rebecca Parker. Hope rises. It rises from the heart of life here and now, beating with joy and sorrow. Hope longs. It longs for good to be affirmed, for justice and love to prevail, for suffering to be alleviated, and for life to flourish in peace. Hope remembers. It remembers the dreams of those who have gone before and reaches for connection with them across the boundary of death. Hope acts. It acts to bless, to protest, and to repair.
I've been thinking a lot about we humans during COVID isolation. As like many of you, I've had much less to actually do and much more time to read and think. We individuals are mostly social animals. We typically want to agree with the group, and we too often defer to people with perceived higher status. We often assume that something is safe if everyone else is doing it, or at least maintain a shamefaced silence about our fears. We often hate being wrong, but we're more afraid of being wrong on a question that everyone else seems to get right. A few months ago, Stan and I were having lunch with two very dear friends who are devout Catholics. Somehow the conversation got around to the topic of religion, and my friend asked us why we attend church on Sundays. My own answer was sort of nebulous. I told him I go to church because I want to be the best person I can be. And in order to do that, I need inspiration and direction from our minister. I also told my friend that I go to church to see and hear examples of the best in human nature that are so often exhibited by the members of this congregation. For example, without Accotink sponsorship, I probably would not get involved in participating in and supporting a hypothermia shelter. Or I would have no idea about the existence of the organization Homestretch that provides such important services to homeless families in Northern Virginia. Without an Accotink member fostering a student mentorship program at a local elementary school, I would not have worked with a little impish first grader named Isaiah and got to know a lot more about the daily routine in one of our local Fairfax County schools. I can give you a myriad of examples of how the leadership and membership of Accotink rouse me to be a more giving and caring person. But I think you now get the idea. You often inspire me. But in that conversation with my friends, they wanted me to share more specific information about Unitarian Universalism. They asked, are there any mandates or rules to follow if you're a Unitarian Universalist? Well, I remembered the first of our UU principles about the inherent worth and dignity of every person. But I admit, I faltered on the wording of the other 6 and now other 7 principles. So I pulled out a copy of our UU principles that I always carry in my wallet and read the rest of them to our friends. I felt a bit inadequate at that moment because I can still recite every word of the 10 Commandments that I learned growing up in the Catholic Church. Still, I did have the initiative to keep that cheat sheet of our list of principles in my wallet. In trying to be the best me I can be, I go to church to get a picture of an ideal way of living, a sort of guide to live by. And you do have to have heart. After all, it's Valentine's Day, and I should say something about the heart. Yes, you gotta have heart and determination to try to be a better person because it takes some work. I believe that to reflect on my own behavior and motivations, to live thoughtfully, examining my own life is essential to responsible living. Or, as Socrates said, the examined life is not worth living. Now, growing up squarely in the Catholic faith tradition and starting to go to confession at the age of 7 may have helped me to deeply understand and internalize the notion of guilt. And so, dear friends, I'm going to bear a bit of my heart and soul to you. For example, I reluctantly admit that I sometimes struggle with being a bit too quick to judge people or their motives. Our son Eric calls this feels versus reals. My snap judgment about someone's persona or someone's activity or their behavior is a feel judgment, not a real judgment. When I judge others, I tend to do so quickly as a result of my own beliefs, education, life experiences, and possible misconceptions. But jumping to a conclusion, responding to a gut feeling can blind me, causing me to quickly shut off and ignore the complexity of someone else, that real person. It may be that people who seem to me at first glance to be mean or cruel, shallow, untrustworthy, or just unfriendly, actually act from some kind of fear or sadness. By looking beneath the facade and immediate appearance of a person, I might find very human and tragic struggles. This in turn can help me to show compassion. I've known some individuals who make snap judgments all the time. They declare their approval or disapproval of whatever and whomever they are observing or experiencing. The problem is that those snap judgments forego careful consideration and are merely the automatic expression of their personal prejudices and pet peeves. Those judgments happen so fast that they often have trouble distinguishing between their judgments and reality. And sometimes they're not even aware of the fact that they are judging people. These little judgments, whether they are said out loud or not, are often extremely damaging to those who are judged. Good judgment is the ability to differentiate between right and wrong in situations without clear guidelines or where different values may collide. It requires ethical thinking. Good judgment also includes considering the consequences of one's decisions, thinking before acting and speaking, and having the tools to make good decisions in a variety of situations. But for some individuals I've met, judgment is a way of life. Did you ever meet one of those people who thinks he or she is always right? They can be very convincing and so emphatic that it is disarming to state a different point of view. Even without an audience, some people can be so used to their own points of view that anything or anyone who doesn't agree with them is immediately seen to be false and rejected like a knee-jerk reaction without any consideration of possible merit. I'm not the only person who sometimes makes snap judgments. I'd already started working on this homily for today, and I was reading the Washington Post, and I noticed an Ask Amy column on this very subject. The person asking Amy for advice said that while growing up, she would often be driving home with her parents after an event. During the drive, her parents would start to badmouth the people that they had just visited. Also, her parents would start making comments about her or her boyfriend after get-togethers. Her mom would tell her about the things she or her boyfriend did wrong. Worst of all, the questioner admitted that she was now doing the very same thing. She asked Amy if she had any advice on how to break the cycle. Amy quoted the admonition, "Judge not, lest ye be judged." She went on to suggest that the best way to break a habit is to address it one incident at a time, giving yourself a little ping, maybe an actual little pinch every time you find yourself engaging in unfair and judgmental comments. So why does anyone engage in judgmental behavior? I don't claim to be a psychologist, but many researchers believe it's because being judgmental can wrongly seem to benefit us in a number of ways. Being judgmental can make us feel superior or self-righteous, giving us a false sense of our own self-worth. Also, judgmentalism can allow us to avoid our own faults by pointing those same faults out in others. Lastly, extremely judgmental individuals often unconsciously protect themselves from being hurt by the acts and opinions of others. Does anyone bring a recent president to mind when we reflect on why people can be excessively, even desperately judgmental? I believe Trump is an extreme example of a person who thinks of things in harsh black and white terms. Something is either good or bad, right or wrong. An individual is either loyal or an enemy. Researcher Judith Johnson states that in the minds of overly judgmental people, they believe that their frequent criticisms aren't excessive. They don't believe that they have a baseless need to bring others down. A judgmental person feels the need to assert what is plainly true to himself or herself. Harshly judgmental people preserve their understanding of themselves as non-judgmental. They claim that it's only the abundance of faults in others and not their own need to criticize that so often leads them to state their negative commentary about the people or behaviors around them. Imagine what might happen if we all started to hold ourselves accountable for the impact our snap judgments have on others. We always have kinder options available to us. The trick is having the sense to choose them. This takes practice. But just as snap judgments can become a habitual behavior, So can kindness. We have to choose to be conscious and responsible to exert more compassionate behavior. We got to have heart and practice kinder reactions to each other. After all, careless words can make people love or respect you a little less than they did before. I don't expect a fence post that's painted white to remain that color. That fence post has to be repainted due to weather and time, and changing a habit has to be consciously worked at. Reverend Susan Frederick Gray said she believes that to be a Unitarian Universalist, we are all called again and again to learn, to make amends, to restore relationship, and to choose love. I'll add that I think we should try and look at ourselves, our community, and the world around us with compassion and love, not just on Valentine's Day, but every day. My heart tells me to hold myself accountable and try each day to resist judgment and blame. We are all given just one single imperfect life. Each of us has to figure out how to live it, how to deal with our perfections and our mistakes. This congregation, this UU community, helps me to grapple with my flaws and become not perfect, but more real. And circling back to where I started with that first UU principle, may all of us, especially me, resist making snap judgments and affirm the inherent worth and dignity of all.
Thank you for that homily, Paulette. And before I extinguish the chalice, think on these words. Remember that we carry within us what we kindled, the light of inspiration, the warmth of compassion, and the fire of commitment. May we bring these gifts into our lives and share them radiantly out into the world. I invite you now to join me in the community blessing with the words of David Bumbaugh. This church is dedicated to the proposition that behind all our differences and beneath all our diversity, there is a unity that makes us one and binds us forever together in spite of time, death, and the space between the stars. We pause now in silent witness to that unity.
I'll end the service today with the words of Cynthia Landrum. We leave this gathered community, but we don't leave our connection, our concerns, our care for each other, our service to each other, to the world, and to our faith continue. Until we are together again, friends, be strong, be well, be true, be loving.